Welcome to Hot Drama TV.
When silence speaks louder than love. The unlikely on-screen truth of Liu Yuning and Song Zuer. At first, nothing about them seems designed to work. He enters the frame quietly, tall, still, almost guarded, as if every word has already been weighed and then discarded. She steps in with open emotion, eyes that respond before her lips do, carrying feelings she doesn't try to hide. No dramatic music announces their connection. No obvious spark demands your attention. And yet, somewhere between a glance that lingers too long and a silence that refuses to break, the audience stops watching a drama and starts believing a story. This is the strange power of Liu Yuning and Song Zuer on screen. A connection built on what is not said. Most screen romances tell you how to feel. This one asks you to notice. Their characters do not rush toward each other. They circle. They hesitate. They pause in moments where confession should happen, and let those moments pass. In those pauses, something real takes shape. Liu Yuning's performance is defined by restraint. His characters often seem carved from endurance rather than desire. Emotion lives in his posture, in the way he stands still while everything inside him moves. Song Zuer, on the other hand, reacts to what is missing. She doesn't perform emotion loudly. She listens to it. Her strength lies in response. A soft inhale, a lowered gaze, a choice not to speak. Together, they create a language without dialogue. Why the audience feels it, even when nothing happens. Viewers don't fall for their chemistry because of grand romance. They fall because the dynamic feels familiar. We recognize it instantly. Wanting to speak but choosing silence. Loving without permission. Standing close to someone and still feeling distance. This is not the fantasy of love. It is the memory of it. Their scenes unfold slowly, almost daring the audience to lose patience. But those who stay are rewarded with something rare in modern storytelling. Emotional honesty without explanation. No performance, only presence. What makes this pairing quietly powerful is the absence of performance ego. Neither actor pushes for dominance in a scene. Instead, they leave space and trust the other to fill it. The camera doesn't rush them. The story doesn't decorate their emotions. They simply exist within the moment. And that existence feels real. The kind of chemistry that doesn't ask for belief. There are pairings that are loud, visually stunning, instantly viral. And then there are pairings like this, the kind that grows on you long after the episode ends. Liu Yuning and Song Zuer do not demand that you ship them. They don't ask for speculation. They don't rely on off-screen narratives. Their connection lives entirely where it should. On screen, in silence, in shared restraint. When the screen stops feeling like fiction, by the time the story pauses, not ends, just pauses, you realize something unexpected has happened. You didn't watch them fall in love. You remembered how it feels to almost do so. And that is why their pairing lingers. Not because it is dramatic. Not because it is perfect. But because it feels like something you once lived and never quite forgot. When distance becomes the strongest form of intimacy, there is a moment in their story that almost no one talks about. It is not a confession. It is not a separation. It is simply a pause, long enough to make the audience uncomfortable. Liu Yuning's character stands still, saying nothing, even when the answer is already written on his face. Song Zuer's character looks at him, waiting, not for words but for certainty. And when it doesn't come, she doesn't demand it. She steps back. That single step contains more truth than 100 love speeches. Because real intimacy is not built on possession. It is built on respect for distance. The courage to let feelings remain unresolved. Most dramas fear unresolved emotion. They rush to closure, afraid the audience will grow restless. This story does the opposite. It allows longing to exist without resolution. It allows love to remain unclaimed. And in doing so, it mirrors real life far more closely than fiction usually dares to. Liu Yuning plays longing as something heavy, something that must be carried, not confessed. His restraint is not weakness. It is responsibility. Every moment he stays silent is a choice, not a failure. Song Zuer responds not with anger, but with understanding. Her performance suggests a painful maturity. The knowledge that loving someone does not always mean being chosen by them. That quiet understanding breaks the heart more gently, and more deeply. Why silence makes the story louder. In their shared scenes, silence becomes a third character. Sits between them. It interrupts sentences. It fills the space where music would usually swell. And because nothing is explained, the audience leans in. We search their expressions. We listen to breaths. We read meaning into what is withheld. The absence of clarity forces emotional participation, and that participation makes the experience personal. This is why viewers don't simply remember their scenes. They feel them long after. A love that refuses to be convenient. What truly sets this pairing apart is its refusal to be convenient. Their connection does not simplify the story, complicates it. It introduces moral weight, emotional cost, and the possibility of regret. Love is not presented as a reward, but as a responsibility. And that is why it resonates. Because the most unforgettable relationships in life are rarely the ones that end happily, but the ones that change us permanently. The afterimage that lingers. When the episode ends, nothing explodes. Nothing resolves neatly. But something stays. A look you can't forget. A silence that feels familiar. A story that doesn't leave when the screen goes dark. This is not the kind of pairing that chases applause. It waits. And in that waiting, it becomes unforgettable. When love is strong enough to remain unclaimed, there is a quiet bravery in choosing not to cross a line. In their story, love is never denied, but it is also never taken. It exists in the narrow space between desire and restraint, where every step forward must be measured against consequence. Lu Yuning's character understands this space instinctively. He does not turn away because he feels nothing, but because he feels too much. His stillness is the result of awareness that once love is spoken, it cannot be unsaid. Song Zuer's character understands something equally difficult, that being loved does not always mean being chosen. And yet, she does not diminish herself to be chosen. She waits. Then she lets go, not of feeling but of expectation. That choice changes the meaning of the entire story. The most painful truth the story dares to tell. Some connections are not meant to be completed. They are meant to be remembered. This story does not treat love as an achievement, but as a turning point. A moment that reshapes who you are, even if it never becomes yours. The tragedy is not separation. The tragedy is knowing what could have been, and accepting what must be. That truth lands quietly, but it stays. Why this pairing feels adult, not romanticized. What makes Lu Yuning and Song Zuer's on-screen dynamic so striking is its emotional maturity. There is no illusion that love conquers everything. No promise that sincerity guarantees happiness. Instead, the story offers something rarer. Respect for emotional complexity. They do not save each other. They recognize each other. And sometimes, recognition is the deepest form of intimacy. The scene that ends without ending. Near the end, there is no final embrace. No dramatic farewell. Just two people standing apart, carrying the same unspoken truth, that they matter to each other in a way that will never fully fade. The camera pulls away. Life continues. But something inside the audience remains still. Why we return to stories like this? Long after louder romances are forgotten, stories like this endure. Because they don't flatter our fantasies. They honor our memories. They remind us of the person we once almost loved. The words we never said. The choice we made or didn't. Lu Yuning and Song Zuer do not offer a perfect love story. They offer a real one. And that is why it lingers.